Give us an example of that first problem, I guess, you were able to solve that times unlocked. One of the things that I know our listeners will enjoy hearing is like, hey, what was the problem? Give us an idea of what the solution looked like. And then, of course, what was the outcome? When you're building this product, you're thinking to yourself, there's a distinct subset of problems I want to solve. So if you could kind of walk us through, hey, I wanted to do this. I never had anything that could do it before. I implemented my own tool times. Boom, I was able to solve it. Now I know I got something.
One of the really interesting things about security is it's an incredibly diverse set of problems that you deal with. Everything from how do we design architecture in a secure way, to how do we respond to these types of incidents, to how we like reverse engineer malware. So you get to work on a lot of different things. The teams that I ran and the teams that I worked in as an individual contributor were very much like operations teams. So keeping the lights on, receiving alerts from all 50 different tools that we had deployed in various different ways. And so the product that I wanted to build, or that I felt the world needed, had to be extremely flexible to be able to solve a bunch of different problems. Had to work in a sufficient way to be able to respond to any type of alert, interact with any type of system. And it had to be extremely accessible. So you had to be able to use this tool without knowing how to code, and it needed to be really reliable as well. So there was kind of three problems that we were solving. One, we needed a product that would allow people who didn't know how to write code, produce code, essentially. We needed a product that would be extremely reliable, scalable, secure, and we ultimately needed a platform that would allow anyone, regardless of their technical background, automate any process. And our kind of like big bet and our great innovation was that any process in an enterprise, regardless of whether it's security, IT, infrastructure, DevOps, is really just a sequence of actions. And so if you're analyzing phishing emails, for example, the first step or the first action that you're going to take is to receive the email. The second action that you might take is to look at the attachments and see if they're malicious. The third action you might take is to analyze the URLs and see if any of them are phishing URLs or credential harvesters. And then the fourth step might be to create a ticket in Jira. The fifth step might be to go and reset a password. And the sixth step might be to go and notify the person who received it. But it's all just sequence of actions and decisions. Our great bet was that there had to be a limited number of things that we would need to support that would allow you automate any process. And so what we did when we founded the company was we went around to all of our friends and people that we'd worked with in the past and ex-colleagues, and we said, hey, tell me about all your individual workflows. Every single workflow that you do in your company, tell us about it. And so we collected about 500 individual workflows, everything from pictures of Confluence documents to whiteboard drawings to SOPs to Word docs. And we printed all these documents out, all these workflows out. Who knows how many trees we killed doing this process, but we printed out all these documents and we started circling all these individual steps that were like similar. We took out some highlighters and we said, okay, anything that means we send an email, we're going to make that yellow. And anything that involves a decision, we're going to make that red. And anytime we're talking to an external tool, we're going to make that blue. And what we were doing was trying to understand what the minimum number of steps that we would need to support would be. And ultimately, we landed on 7. With times, everything that you automate, everything, regardless of whether it's an extraordinarily complex employee onboarding process to something really, really simple like sending swag to a new employee. Everything that you do is always automated using just these 7 basic building blocks. And what that means is that once you know how to configure these 7 things, you're essentially as effective as a senior software engineer. It takes us about 3 hours to get you up to speed on how to configure these 7 things. And once you know how to do it, that's it. That's everything that you will ever need to automate any process in your organization. And because then we take care of all the hard things like version control, change management, scalability, security, retries, robustness. All you actually need to know is what you want to automate and which one of these 7 things is best suited to perform that step.
Everyone thinks that their work or their job is more complicated than it might be. And then we've always heard great software engineers talk about, hey man, you just have to boil things down to the basic. David Heinemeier Hansen was on our show and he talks about only what's essential. If it's not there, it doesn't need to be there. And so you're saying there's 7 major automations or connection points that need to be made to handle, it sounds like a bulk of the problems. When you discovered this, did you yourself question your sanity? Like, this can't be right. Like, there's only 7 things to do. Did you question your sanity, or were you more excited to be like, hey, this is it? And I also want to know, when you first told that first customer that wasn't your friend, hey, there's only 7 things you need to do to run your whole company. They're like, nah, that's BS. That can't be right.
Yeah. When I started this exercise, I really, really hoped it was going to be 5. I had this obsession with, like, 5 fingers. You can do a lot with 5 fingers, right? And so I was actually bitterly disappointed when we actually looked at it and we were like, okay, actually it's 7. We're going to have to support 7 of these things. We've been doing this now for nearly 5 years, and we've helped hundreds of companies, 10,000 people using the free version of our product, automating hundreds of thousands of workflows every single day. We've given ourselves a lot of confidence over time that yes, this is the sum total of things that we will need to support. We still get pushback all the time. All the time. And we kind of say, like, listen, just trust us, right? Like, trust us, try and automate a couple of things and see how it goes. And we're not dogmatic about the fact that, hey, maybe one day there'll be an 8. We don't say that it's going to be 7 forever. But what we do say is that we're going to continue to listen, but we're going to be very opinionated about the kind of things that you would need to support. The other thing I will say is, like, hey, we do a lot with 26 letters in the alphabet, in the English alphabet. We've written Shakespeare and Happy Birthday and every song on the planet. It's not as if this is an incredibly groundbreaking concept that you should have a limited number of primitives and be able to construct wonderful things. The analogy we sometimes use is, let's say you're a carpenter. If you're a carpenter, you've got a hammer, a chisel, a drill, a saw, a pencil and a penknife, right? And you construct houses, tables, doors, install floors by just being a master of those handful of tools. And so I think the other part of this is that, like, we also don't say that these are the only 7 things that, like, you're ever going to need. There might be some insane edge case where there's actually a more powerful tool, where, like, rather than using a handsaw, you should use like a bandsaw or something like that's maybe more attuned for the job. But what we are saying is that once you know how to use these 7 things, there'll always be a way to automate what you need with just this toolkit.
Hey, thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel for more great IT thought leadership. And thanks to our partners at Salesforce Platform for making this show possible. Go to salesforce.com/newsletter to discover timely insights and useful tips tailored to your role.